Welcome to the Tuesday, April 18th, 2023 regular City Council meeting. We'll begin with roll call.
Councilmember Brookover.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Here.
Mayor Bacon.
Present. Next up, I'll look for approval of the agenda.
I move for approval of the agenda with an amendment moving item 3.6 concerning 854 terrain to the business agenda.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next up, approval of the minutes, regular council meeting, April 4th, 2023. I'll look for a motion.
I move approval.
Support.
Moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilperson Garcia. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All written communication received by council are posted to the online agenda packet, and that's typically all communication received before 4 p.m. Next up, communication from the audience. It's okay if you fill out one of the blue forms. If you haven't, just state your name over the. But I'll go. Let me start with this one. Molly, small cell.
Thank you. Molly Spooner, 815 Stewart. I'm not a public speaker, so give me some grace. Okay. The East Lansing City Small Cell Ordinance anticipates design standards being adopted by the city, so that's what we're proposing tonight. This regulates the placement of the small cells, focuses on co-location. These are modeled after Ann Arbor, but we look forward to iterating on them and adopting them better for East Lansing. We'll make things better here. These are administrative guidelines, so the city manager will be able to modify them as appropriate going forward. So we thank you for prioritizing this, and we really appreciate all the time the city staff has put into it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say I've been bragging on how quickly you guys pulled this all together. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm better at that than speaking in public.
Thank you so much. Public comment? Seeing none. In the online queue?
Number ending in 954, you're welcome to address council.
Good evening. This is Nicole. Living over on Blanchett Street in the Pinecrest neighborhood. I wanted to call in whenever I see anything to do with the green spaces. I like to give a few friendly reminders and suggestions to people. Arbor Day's coming up. That certainly grew out of a alarm people had previously about the loss of trees, and alongside that alarm, as we often realize, there's a sense of possibility linked to the nostalgia. So, it seems like there's always money for development, for athletic fields, all of this and that. So it kind of leaves us really kind of responsible as individuals, maybe more than we should be, compared to, that's a lot of the public money that's going towards these larger scale projects. But we have it, within our capacity to make up for the losses that are before us every day. Maybe a lot of time people don't see it. It's difficult to see. I struggle a lot with how clear it is to me that we're quickly running out of time. Some people say we're out of time, that it's too late, but I think that's a disrespectful stance, because given a little bit of assistance, the natural world can return given some space. So when we think about Arbor Day, that's been a pretty good success. A lot of people participate. The city does. I appreciate that. There'll be trees planted, but we need to understand that those trees, they're not meant to just be individual species that are, there to kind of look at and make us feel good. They have a really important role in a larger community. If we think about a lot of compatible species that, really are meant to cover the ground, we need to think in terms of that and how we can return to that as intentional way of interacting with the spaces we occupy. So anyone who's been by, where we live knows that we have a lot of gardens, this and that. And I know maybe it looks different. There's more people on our street. There's more people around the city. I see sort of taking this approach where it's a conscious effort to increase the biodiversity that's just surrounding us in our small spaces, because it can make a massive difference. We need to do it now. At the very least, I implore anyone listening on council and in our city as neighbors, please stop putting poisons on your yard. Please stop. It goes into our water. You can't only kill mosquitoes. It's going to kill every invertebrate that's around. We need them. You have enough biodiversity in your yard. Planting with Arbor Day includes some other species. They like to have a community. You'll get frogs that eat those mosquitoes. You'll get other insects and birds that eat those mosquitoes. We can't pick and choose and have just a sterility surrounding us and expect anything good to come of it. So Arbor Day is a positive thing, but I'd really encourage people to take it as an opportunity to think broadly, more broadly than that. And when those leaves fall, you leave the leaves. Do you like fireflies? When we pick up the leaf litter, what we call litter, it gets rid of what they need to incubate. When we mow the grass into oblivion, it's damaging. So please just consider it an opportunity to increase biodiversity across the board. Gretchen.
Thank you. Communication from the mayor and council. Councilperson Garcia.
Nothing.
Councilperson Brookover.
Nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Watson.
Just one comment, because I keep forgetting to mention it. Who can I signal to when I can't hear their caller as well as I'd like to? Can I just kind of, all right, I'm going to do that. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Yeah, just a little PSA for a project that's kind of close to my heart. I had a chance to sit in with a group of youth that are possibly informing the formation of our new youth commission that we are working on getting off the ground. So we've had 2 out of 3 listening sessions. There's one more remaining, which is this Saturday at 11 a.m. And it would be lovely to see some more of our high school age residents. We're kind of trying to form this in a way that will have the best chance for meaningful work coming out of that commission, I guess is the best way to put that. It's my privilege to sit as a liaison with our University Student Commission, and it's been consistently eye-opening to see how deeply our student residents are thinking about the community, and I think that the same is true of our youth residents as well, and I'm really excited about this opportunity to include them in our city government. So one more chance for the youth of our community to interact with our staff before we start defining what that commission is going to be, which is Saturday at 11 a.m., I believe. Is it at Hannah? Yeah, it's here at Hannah Center. So that's all from me. Thanks.
Councilperson Watson.
I just wanted to clarify, we're looking for East Lansing High School students, so they don't have to. Right. Yep, yes, it's age 14. Yep, go ahead.
Right, from the school district. This is hopefully going to be a commission that kind of bridges our school district and our city. So, yeah.
Well, they don't have to attend East Lansing High School, do they?
No, but East Lansing, yeah, sorry. Any youth resident of East Lansing is welcome to attend, and any student that is enrolled in East Lansing Public Schools, so at the high school level. Made that as confusing as possible. Sorry about that.
Was that it? Thank you. Next up, I, of course, want to acknowledge next week on April 27th, the Crystal Awards. Always a wonderful acknowledgement of the community and members of the community who just do good works, both historically and, around the community. So we look forward to celebrating them beginning at 5 p.m. Reception, and recipients' announcements begin at 6 p.m. on the 27th. I, too, want to focus in on kind of the early findings from this, and Kathy DeChambeau and her team are already working on some of this. I see this coming up on the Hannah Center, and I was talking to some individuals this morning with the Chamber about your upcoming community connection and the stuff that you guys are doing with the city here. I think this is based on the findings from this kind of mental health perspective and the work that the city's doing. I think this is maybe the most important thing we have happening, and I really hope we get a cadence with this because it's just so important. On Thursday, April 20th, 6 to 8 p.m., we'll have a community connection around mental health. Who's invited? If you're a parent of children, an adult with serious mental health conditions, family members and friends, college students, you're a teacher, administrator, legislator, it's for everyone. Per our conversations with the young people, we would expect specific answers, but the mental health is off the charts with where the challenges are located. And talking to members of the organization, Mental Health Association in Michigan, the numbers are staggering, and it's in the lower tiers of individuals are starting out about 11 years old, up through early teens, and then the second largest group is in kind of middle teens up through the early 20s. So it's an absolute crisis, and it's come up in every conversation we've had with young people already, in limited contact, and in every organizational thing that we're having. It's the number one concern: high levels of anxiety, things we would assume, safety, school, and things like that. But things I wasn't assuming: climate, policy things, really deep things that I didn't think young people sat around and had anxiety about are very, they're engaged. They're more engaged in a great way that I'm happy about. But I think in a lot of ways they feel powerless, and it's triggering a ton of. These are massive numbers being reported from the Mental Health Association in Michigan. These are in the thousands for kids who are reported in self-reporting through a survey that they were doing. And I just want to give kudos to Kathy and anyone else involved in this to get this up and running, and whatever we can do to put muscle behind this. This is a crisis. For sure, and we support whatever you want to do in this area. But definitely let's get out on Thursday, April 20th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. to connect and figure out resources, because sometimes once the crisis begins, it's too late to figure out where the resources are at that point. So we're going to try to coordinate resources, and we'll do a better job as a city on helping to coordinate resources in this area, both internally and externally. I'd like to see this be as important as walking and any other kinds of health that we try to promote in the community. This mental health piece is absolutely staggering. So we're here to support and help out with it. So next up, City Manager's report.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. Good evening to the members of the audience and the community, and to staff. I also attended the first team focus group meeting at the library, and I was very impressed by what the young people brought and offered, and by way of feedback, and I look forward to that group being assembled and the things that they might bring forward from their perspective. I think is very beneficial. I had an opportunity to attend the MSU Innovation Celebration at the Kellogg Center that recognized all the hard work there that goes on in the tech, and those that are working there diligently and innovating every day. It was an excellent event. If you ever get an opportunity to attend, I really would encourage that. Attended the Capital Regional Airport opening, or the groundbreaking for the cargo ramp, and I was really impressed with what's happening there as well, and what that will mean to the airport. Of course, it is only the second international port, and I think the only other international port in Michigan beyond Detroit and Wayne Metro Airport. You've mentioned, and I was going to also mention the Community Connection event that will help the community navigate community mental health system, and that again will be held Thursday at Hannah from 6 to 8 p.m. Wanted to remind, especially young people that might be listening, or parents, or those that are working with young people, that we are still taking applications for work, especially throughout the summer, and we're looking for young people that are seeking jobs as lifeguards, slide operators, customer service associates, working with Hannah, and these are seasonal employment opportunities, and the training is provided to anyone that is interested. So for young people that are looking for things to do this summer, we really encourage you to consider working with the City of East Lansing. I also would like to remind people that Book Bikes and Bids will be back in person for the first time since 2019. Join the library staff on April 28th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. for a fun night at the library with beer and wine, great food, music, and a silent auction. Tickets are $35 for individuals and $70 for a couple or family. And I'm sure you could contact the library for additional information. And I think that will be where I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney's report.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to briefly provide the update in the matter of Hios v. City of East Lansing. The Court of Appeals did rule in the city's favor last week, overturning the Ingham County Circuit Court, which previously did rule against the city. This finding means that, in the determination, means that the fee that is placed on the Board of Water and Light bills will continue. This is really important for the budget of the city. As you'll recall, the damages sought were over $5 million in previously received fees that were collected, and it also would have forced us to stop collecting about $1.5 million a year going forward. So as we approach the budget season, this really provides a little bit of clarity. We do expect that there will be an appeal, but in my opinion, I don't think that it's very likely that the Supreme Court will take it up. And so I think this does provide a lot more clarity as we go into the budget, and we can presume that that $1.5 million will continue. That's it.
Thank you. Next up, the consent agenda.
Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. Matt Apostle to the Local Development Finance Authority for a partial term ending June 30th, 2024. Abigail Taikaki to the Local Development Finance Authority for a full term ending June 30th, 2027. Michael Kruger to the Downtown Development Authority for a full term ending June 30th, 2027. Michael Kruger to the Brownfield Development Authority for a full term ending June 30th, 2027. Patrick Beatty to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a partial term ending December 31st, 2024. Approve a request from item 3.2, approve a request from Laurence Rosen, Chair of the Housing Commission, for a leave of absence from February 2023 through May of 2023. Item 3.3, approve a resolution recognizing April 24th, 2023 as Remembrance Day of the genocide of the Armenians. Item 3.4, approve a resolution proclaiming April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the City of East Lansing. Item 3.5, approve year 3 of a 5-year contract with 100 Acre Woods in the amount of $97,480 for soccer field maintenance at the East Lansing Soccer Complex and East Lansing Hannah Community Center for a period 1 year beginning April 1st, 2023, and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 3.6.
I think, Randy, 3.6 is the new 4.6.
I'm sorry?
3.6 is moved to 4.6.
Okay, item 3.6 will be moved to 4.6. Item 3.7, approve a conditional Class 3 rental license with one additional condition for 501 Spartan Avenue, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the property. The owner is Joshua Gilson Burton Parker, CO, and the legal agent is Thomas Burton of Lansing, Michigan. Item 3.8, set a public hearing for May 9th, 2023 to consider the fiscal year 2024 Community Development Block Grant budget. And item 3.9, approve a resolution to receive and file a recommendation from the Downtown Management Board on the continuation of the Principal Shopping District Project Special Assessment, to declare the project a special necessity, to receive and file Special Assessment Roll 77 for the cost of the district of the property, and to set the date and the time for 2 public hearings regarding continuation of the special assessment for May 9th, 2023 and May 23rd, 2023. And that completes the consent agenda.
I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Moved by Councilperson Watson,
Second.
second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on the consent agenda. Next up, item 4.1, consideration of policy resolution 2023-7, a resolution instituting an amnesty period for street sign and equipment prosecution.
Yeah, this is something that originated in our University Student Commission. It's not a change in city policy per se. We don't really aggressively prosecute this type of, obviously we don't encourage this type of theft, but we don't prosecute it either as a rule. So this is just kind of bringing that to more public attention. It was pointed out by one of our university student commissions that as our student residents are packing up their belongings and returning possibly to their parents' houses, that they might not want to transport some signage that might have possibly fallen into their possession over the 9 months of the school year. So this would give an opportunity and a place for people to take those things out of their personal homes and return them to us so that we can return them into circulation. So I can answer any questions that anybody has about it.
Yeah, so I'm going to vote for it, but this is for essentially 2 weeks while they're moving out. But I guess this also gives the amnesty to somebody who goes downtown and steals a sign during that 2 weeks.
No, actually, if you look at the resolution, it says, nothing contained in here shall limit the prosecution of theft or signs of equipment which is discovered in progress during that period.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yep, we kind
Thank
of, the other thing that was pointed out to me by our public safety officers is that having a large pile of street signs in our city hall lot might become an attractive nuisance. And so we're going to plan to transport those pretty efficiently out to DPW so that they don't become a target per se.
You want to make the motion?
You want me to move it? Yeah. Sure. Hang on a second. Let me scroll back up. So I'll move approval of policy resolution 2023-7, a resolution instituting an amnesty period for street sign and equipment prosecution.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, second by Councilperson Garcia. Any further discussion?
Does, is there a definition of what equipment is?
Let's see.
weigh in on that. Yeah, so we didn't include a definition of equipment because we did kind of want to be far-reaching. We did note that there are certain park signs and a couple other things we're actually looking for, and we really want to promote them being returned.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm told the Spartan Avenue signs are very popular and hard to keep on their poles. So there's certain attractive nuisances per se. Yeah.
Great. And it's to let people know that they might be disposing of the sign and they might not no longer need it, but we could still use it back. Yeah. Definitely.
Rather than have them end up in dumpsters, we'd like them to be returned to our Department of Public Works so that we can put them back into use.
Just out of curiosity, do we have an idea of what the average cost of a street sign, like for instance Spartan Avenue? What's the cost to us? Ron, do you know that offhand?
Those can vary, but you're probably looking $50 per sign, but a lot of times they take the sign post and anything else attached to it. So a lot of times it's more than just a street sign. It's the stop sign below it and other things, so.
And then we have cost of installation.
Absolutely. The post is $100 and installation is, a couple hours, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm convinced the air conditioning is on.
Is that cold air?
I thought so. Okay.
And
All
it's
right.
really loud, whatever it is.
So if we ask you to repeat yourself, it's because we've got fan noise above us.
Yeah, we apologize.
Yep.
There's no further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 4.2, second reading of ordinance 1519, an ordinance to repeal East Lansing City Ordinance, Chapter 6, Article 3, Section 6-175, subsection 1006.4.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, just as a reminder, this is the repeal of the ordinance related to the Hagan v. City of East Lansing lawsuit. After this second reading, they have agreed to withdraw the lawsuit. This ordinance required landlords to give out certain information to new tenants regarding voting, including a voter application, and our communication with the city manager and city staff determined that this is not the way we typically do voter outreach, and so it was determined that repealing this would not in any way impair voter outreach within the city.
So do we need a motion on this?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we repeal East Lansing City Ordinance, Chapter 6, Article 3, Section 6-175, subsection 1006.4, and let me also disclose that somebody in the Hagan family gave me money towards my election, so, but I still think this is the right thing to do, so, despite the Hagans giving me money.
I'll look for a second. Second. Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Councilperson Watson. Any further discussion? And I will mention, I did get to have a conversation with the Hagan family, and they hope that the tone of the lawsuit wasn't upsetting to any people in the community. They thought it was going to be a large component of other people signed on, and when the thing came out, they were the only people left on the ledger. So they were feeling a little rough about being the only person on the lawsuit coming against the city of East Lansing. So almost apologetic, but they were.
Still standing by their.
Yes, but they thought it was going to be more of a class that was going to come with them. No one came with them, so, yeah. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 4.3, consideration of policy resolution 2023-8, a resolution to adopt small cell design standards for the city of East Lansing.
I'll actually start the discussion on this one. So one change that we need to make is that in talking with members of the ad hoc committee prior to the meeting and previous discussions, we do know that we've been trying to adopt this quickly, but we need to continue to refine it. And so I think it's best that rather than adopt it through a policy resolution, that we simply implement it administratively so that we can continue to adopt it. That would mean, or amend it rather, that would mean no action would be required by council tonight. This was put together, I mean, it's very comprehensive. I don't know how they did this quickly. And they do have Representative Molly Spooner, who spoke previously, that is here to answer any questions that you might have about the content. And Tim Dempsey may be able to help as well.
I noticed a inaudible question from the audience about what is a small cell. So this has been kind of a hot topic in the neighborhoods that this company has kind of targeted as their first round of installation. These are a piece of equipment that's related to cell phone technology that is a data boosting radio antenna that has to be installed fairly densely in order to work. So anticipating that there will be future interest in installing more of them, we thought that it would be, well, we thought, but also I have to give credit to our Citizen Commission that really put in the work on getting this off the table, that it would be good to get some standards on the books since it's probably something that's going to come up again. Yeah.
So no action required. So is there, anyone have any more comments or points for the?
I'm a little confused by here's what I'd like to know. How soon can we administratively adopt this, and how are we going to communicate that to our citizenry?
I mean, the benefit of adopting it administratively is that we can do it immediately, and that won't prohibit us from continuing to amend it in literally the days and weeks coming forth, because we do know that there are some changes, some further refinements that need to be made. And the other thing is that it's appropriate to do it administratively versus as a legislative action, because as we've spoken about previously, the state law does really preempt any inconsistent ordinances, so it is just being adopted as guidelines regardless.
All right, so we don't need to act on it, so what happens? The city manager tomorrow morning and the start of business administratively adopts this?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay,
yes.
Is there something in writing that does that?
Yeah, I mean, we can publish it with the clerk's office, I guess,
Okay.
to make sure that it's available to the community. But yes, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think he's also probably presuming a broad release or press release or something that people can have access to or something along those lines. Is that
Yeah,
what, is
we've
that
been
my
meeting
assumption?
with
No, I'm not
administrators.
worried about a press release. I'm worried about the applicant being on notice of this formally in writing someplace, rather than us all talking about it one night and then it sort of appears like Topsy or something. So
Got
that's
it.
all.
If so, all the relevant administrative directors, we did meet on Monday with the city manager to discuss what we could do to make sure this process goes as smoothly as possible. We are drafting, I don't think we've sent them out yet, Ron, the 15-day extensions on each of the pending applications. We are notifying all the residents as soon as we get applications, and we are looking at alternative locations that are within 75 feet of the proposed location, which is the state guideline for us to propose an alternative location. However, thereafter, under the state guidelines, then it is the applicant that has to make the determination of whether our proposed alternative location is fiscally feasible and technologically feasible. And so that's why we would do this through guidelines to tell them, hopefully, to pick places that would be consistent with our interests when they submit the application.
Well, then I'd ask that as soon as we have a writing that adopts this administratively, that the city manager or the city attorney direct that to the Crown Castle people and to, I forgot who the carrier is in this one, to Verizon at the same time, so that there can be no argument as they go through this process and we get the extensions that, oh, they didn't know any of this. Because we've already confronted some difficulty with communications with them, let's put it that way.
Well, we have a letter already drafted and ready to go. We plan to send that out tomorrow with this information, the extension and the notice of the new guidelines.
And I would suggest that we send it out first class and certified.
Fair enough.
Further questions?
I'd just like to reiterate that we did meet, and we certainly recognize and understand the concerns that have been expressed and brought forward. We also are somewhat limited in, the choice of words like standards versus guidelines. These are guidelines that we will do our best to pressure the vendor and those responsible parties, Crown Castle and Verizon, to adhere to. But we are somewhat constrained by the law. We also would, as a part of the letters that we are going out, we are encouraging people to, we'll provide contacts to those respective groups so that our residents can make their concerns directly as well and express that, to also hope to pressure the vendors into using the guidelines and considering those guidelines, and also to provide the information to contact your state legislator about the law that essentially empowers them to do that with approvals that are essentially assured. And so we're going to do everything we can to take the concerns forward, but we just wanted to kind of express some of the limitations we have as well.
Mayor, so the efforts by the community is remarkable here with this, but it's been modeled through Ann Arbor's efforts as well, right? Am I correct? Do we know the success of Ann Arbor and their recommendations with this process? Yes.
In speaking with Ann Arbor, they said you absolutely need these, and it is their number one tool. And they said that by using these, they've gotten the vendors to co-locate 80% of the time.
Wow, great.
So it really creates a mechanism to work in collaboration versus telling us how it's going to be.
Great, thank you.
For those that may not be clear online or else or in the audience, the co-location, Tony, our attorney just spoke to that earlier about within 75 feet of a site that has been identified. If there are other towers that exist where that 5G cell tower can be co-located, we can provide that. There's still some limits on our ability to force them to co-locate, but I think what has just been spoken to, I wrote her name down, I'm not sure, it's in the code that says that there was 80% success with the co-location is, I think, helpful.
Thank you. Next up, item 4.4, consideration of cluster development and site plan application to construct 4 3-unit dwellings in the 7.2 acre central area of the Falcon Point development located west of Chandler Road, south of State Road.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight is a site plan that is for constructing 4 3-unit attached single-story residential units. They would be 2 bedrooms each for a total of 12 units. They are just below 1,400 square feet each in total. This is on the center part of the Falcon Point development project between Thoroughbred Lane and Halter Lane. The project, or the subject property, is currently zoned R2, the medium density residential. The 12 units would be in addition to the 120 similar units that are to the east of this project, as well as the 102 single-family residential units that are immediately to the west. And of course, you're all familiar with the existing manufactured home lots, the 16 units that are adjacent as well. The Planning Commission initially held a public hearing on this project back on February 8th. for their initial review. At the March 8th meeting, they tabled any action on it pending updated plans, primarily to address parking facilities for the relocated mail facilities, which they have since done, and added additional parking for the mailboxes that are now at the north side of the project. And then they took action at their March 22nd meeting to approve it 4-0 with 1 abstention. So before you tonight is a motion, should you choose to do so, to approve this site plan subject to the 11 conditions that are laid out in the staff report. All of those conditions are essentially our standard conditions pertaining to typical approval processes that we require all projects to go through during the site plan review process. So that's a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'll move this and then we can discuss. So I'll move to recommend approval of the site plan and cluster development plan for 4 3-unit attached 2-bedroom dwellings in the 7.2 acre center area, Falcon Point between Thoroughbred Lane and Halter Lane, subject to the following 12 conditions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion?
So it's 12 conditions, not 11.
There was 12 at the Planning Commission. The condition that's been removed has been addressed in the site plan, and that was the relocation of the mailboxes. Initially, the parking for the mailboxes, they initially did not have any parking spaces allocated, so that's been added to the plan. The plan was last amended in mid-March to reflect that. Since that's on the plan, that condition has been addressed at the post-Planning Commission level, so we removed it for inclusion in your approval.
Just for formality, should I change it, amend to 11? Yeah. Amending my motion, subject to the following 11 conditions. Hold on one second. You second my motion with the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion?
I'm just concerned about the parking at the mailbox. One of the residents that lives on Thoroughbred Lane just called me a week ago and said that the traffic going down there is going way too fast. So someone parking at that mailbox, that is a very busy corner, how are they arranged, the parking spots? Are they angled to the mailbox or what?
Yeah, so on the site plan, I can have everybody refer to the image here. Let me get the right sheet. So, I'm sorry. I was going to say it's on the sheet. It's parallel, but you can look. You can see it on sheet. Let me get the number here. I apologize.
On the digital agenda, I think it's page 424.
Yep. So out of the 82 pages of this report, it's on page 47. But it's a parallel, they're parallel parking. Yep.
One thing I would suggest, even so, by moving or rearranging the mailboxes, is to post a specific speed through that area. I think that'll solve a lot of problems. I don't know why they go so fast down there. They're going either to the left or to the right in whichever neighborhood they belong to, but they seem to just kind of use that as a thoroughfare. So if that could be arranged and added, that would be really appreciated.
Okay.
Did you have a question for me?
Name for the record there?
My name is Kathy Bracci. I have property on Halter Lane. One of these units will be built right next to me. And I'm happy that this company is the only one that has finished what they said they were going to do, because we've had 3 before that did absolutely nothing. So I'm really pleased to be working with these individuals. They work very hard and they work well with us. So I want to thank you all for that. That's all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Mark James. I live on Thoroughbred Lane. I wanted to touch on a point that Kathy had just brought up, probably to the Planning Commission. I understand the volume of traffic is something you really can't control, but something definitely needs to be done about the speed down the boulevard. It's out of control. I'm outside a lot, working in the yard, working in the garage. The traffic just flies by there. They were under the impression building more units may slow that traffic down some. I don't believe that, because on the other side of the boulevard where it's pretty much full, the traffic is just going as fast. So I brought this up several years ago. There was rumors or suggestions they were going to put in speed bumps. Nothing has ever happened. Seriously, something needs to be addressed, because granted, when summer comes, the golf course opens up, that's that much more traffic coming down the boulevard. There was a road on the far west side of the development that was closed off. I'm not sure why that was never put in. When Mayberry Homes built all those homes, that would have helped some of the problem. But anybody to the back of the development where Mayberry Homes built all the residential units, they use the boulevard. Traffic for years has been coming through there to the back side of the adjoining subdivision, because there's a road where they cut through. So if they're coming off a state road, instead of going all the way around Chandler, I've watched them for years, there's just a lot of traffic coming through there, and I really think something needs to be done to help control that somehow, whether it be speed bumps or whatever. The signage in the neighborhood is almost a joke. There's 2 little postage stamp speed limit signs there that say 15 miles per hour. If you come and stand on my property for a few minutes, they're 30, 40 miles an hour down through there. I don't know what can be done, but it's frustrating to me living there. It's just not as quiet as it should be, in my opinion. Thank you.
What's the name of the road?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of the road?
Thoroughbred Lane. The boulevard. It's one way on each side, so it's the main road there.
It's east to west, correct? East and west?
North-south.
North-south.
Yep. Comes right off a state road.
Okay, I move to amend the motion
Thank you.
in 2 ways. First of all, item 5, I suggest that read, the project shall be designed and designed, developed, and operated in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations. And then a new number 12 be added, that the applicant will install speed bumps on Thoroughbred Boulevard or Lane in accordance with recommendations from the city traffic engineer, at no cost to to any owner or renter in the subdivision.
Accept your amendment.
And please, when you all come up, if you could please say who you are, that'll help me.
Brad Freeman, representative for Falcon Point. And Jared Kime with Atwell, the project civil engineer.
We've got a lot of fan noise above us. If you don't mind just like really yanking that right up by your face, that'd be awesome. Thank
I'm Jared Kime with Atwell, the civil engineer for the project. The proposed amendment to the motion, I think, is maybe a little restrictive in language, referring it specifically to speed bumps. Speed bumps are a very specific type of traffic calming measure that is not ideal for residential developments. They're maintenance nightmares. So we would suggest, if you're looking at traffic calming measures, that we broaden that a little bit to investigate traffic calming measures rather than specifically identifying speed bumps within the development. We need to investigate that. So. Oh.
I wanted to say, as council liaison for the Transportation Commission, that I believe this is something, the Transportation Commission overall is discussing the speed in our city. But I think this is something that we could have them take a look at and give us their recommendations as far as how to do this. Councilmember Brookover and Mayor, if you all were in favor of doing that piece, Transportation Commission addressing it alongside you all perhaps, but and not adding the speed bump portion to it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that all residents in that community are in favor of speed bumps. Speed bumps work for people that are not from the neighborhood, of course, to slow down the traffic as a measure, but every day the residents are going to have to deal with those speed bumps. So my concern is that we hear your concern, but is that the overall concern of your neighbors?
It is.
Okay.
Order.
You
No.
mentioned-
No.
Yeah.
No.
You mentioned the
No.
transportation department.
Order. I have to recognize.
This isn't really a town hall.
It's not.
And it's maybe not a time to engage directly with the developers in terms of specific solutions. We're trying to get this into a form that we can pass tonight.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was addressing what she said about the transportation department.
Commission, yeah.
You know, when they have a camera and they say you will be ticketed if you speed, that's an option. I think it would slow a lot of people down.
Yeah, and I will get your information, and I can also let you know about the Transportation Commission when they meet,
That'd be
or the email address to send communications to them. But I believe, again, if you're open to it, Councilmember Brookover and Mayor, that having them take a look at it and give some feedback would be
Well, thank you
would be
for
great.
that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think you're wonderful, and I think the Transportation Commission is wonderful, and my motion stands.
All right.
So we can either vote it up or vote it down.
All right.
Can you repeat the motion again, please?
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry. It includes the speed bumps, right?
Yeah, so I modify number 5 so that it reads, "The project shall be designed, developed, and operated in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations." And then adding number 12, that I'll defer to the oral record, but that the owner install speed bumps as necessary and advised by the City of East Lansing traffic engineer at no cost to any property owner or renter.
I don't know this. I don't, sir. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. I don't know your name.
Tim Dempsey?
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I actually thought the other person was Tim Dempsey, but I guess.
it's
But
okay.
thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
Sure. Yeah.
So Tim, can you help me understand? Is this something we do sometimes? Add the speed bumps to the recommendations, or add speed bumps to the?
Yeah,
people?
I can't recollect a time where council has at this level added speed bumps. Typically, that's something that's considered outside of the project, or they're in more traditional neighborhoods. These are privately owned streets, so that is a factor at play here as well. But, staff has not reviewed this possibility, so I don't know that anybody's ready tonight to comment in an educated fashion on the impact or effectiveness of what that solution would look like.
I'll say I'm likely to, based on the limitations of the amendment, I'm likely to vote it down. I think I'd rather see them get staff recommendations around, what we can do for traffic calming more broadly, and maybe study this a little bit. I live in the Hawks Nest neighborhood, and I am one of the people who probably comes through your neighborhood occasionally. Very slowly to State Road. So I do see the issue, but I think I'd like us to get look at a more comprehensive solution than just put in some speed bumps.
we can call to a vote and then remotion without that condition.
So you say these streets are privately owned?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so they're
Both.
not subject to an East Lansing city speed ordinance?
Well, the 425 agreement, when these streets came into the city, subjected it to a number of requirements.
Okay.
For instance, like I know Hawknest, when they had to repave, the neighborhood association had to cover the cost of that expense, right? So there's certain things, and we can regulate, I believe, some elements. I don't know if Mr. Lacoste can speak more intelligently about that to me. It's a little foggy in the memory, but there are some things that we do oversee and provide maintenance for.
Well, I mean, what we're doing right now is we're doing changes to a site plan application. So we're making planning decisions, and in my way of thinking, that's irrelevant to, you know, the ownership of the roadway and stuff like this. This is something we're doing in order to make it a better project for the citizens. But I don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind's blowing, so let's just go ahead and vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion fails. Can I get a new motion?
Yep, hang on, I'm gonna do
Then you're
that.
back to the main motion now.
Okay. So that was just the amendment that failed?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to propose an alternative amendment, that we add a condition 12 that the developer work with the residents and under the advice of the East Lansing Transportation Commission to find a satisfactory traffic calming system.
Councilperson Brookover, wasn't there an additional on one of the higher, you amended one of the other line items? Was
Yeah.
it 5?
Yeah, but this is a separate thing now.
Okay. Second?
I will second.
I guess you'd have to second. It's my original motion.
I will second it.
All right.
And-
The amendment's moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, second by Councilperson Watson.
Thank you. And Councilmember Brookover, I just wanted to confirm, you don't want to add that first amendment that you placed?
I'll get there, but with all due respect to the Mayor Pro Tem, what does that mean? That they'll work with? How do we even enforce that? So are we going to give them a site plan approval, so now they can go to their investors and all this stuff, and they can make the investment, and then at some point subsequent in time, we say to them, oh, you know what, we're sorry, guys, you didn't work with the Transportation Commission in terms of traffic calming. And if you want to go, a little farther, look, here's the solution to the traffic thing. We get more cops out there, and they start enforcing the speed limit if they can on this private road. But we're short of police right now. So, I understand what you're trying to do, but I would make it more, what's the word I want? Directive, I guess.
Prescriptive, I think is what you're going for. Yes, sir.
I would say it is an issue that we've identified. It's not to our benefit to not put, a speed reducer. It's a main boulevard, so there's other mechanisms besides a speed bump, whether it be squeezing it in, at certain sections to kind of limit the width, and then landscaping and so on and so forth. But what I'm basically getting at is it's to our benefit to slow down traffic and utilize the boulevard and, beautify it by doing so.
I'm just curious. This is a private road, right? So you own it?
Yeah.
Okay. Not the association?
No.
Okay. So do you carry general liability insurance for anything that happens on the road?
I'm not aware of that. We do share the road. I mean, the golf course is right there. And again, I don't know the details of that. But I do agree with the residents that slowing down traffic would be a benefit for all. I just believe there's other mechanisms in doing that through planning.
Further discussion?
Question, and I wonder if it would be better, sort of, if they worked with the planning staff. I'm uncertain if the planning the commission, I'm sorry, the traffic transportation commission, will they speak to private roads? And this is more of a question than I'm trying to ascertain whether, if we direct them there and they won't take up the question, would it be better served to just have it directed toward planning staff to work with them on the traffic calming?
Who's the staff liaison for transportation?
So the staff liaison for Transportation Commission is typically a Department of Public Works staff person, which I think in the current flux, I'm not sure, I guess that'd be Stephen Clayton would be currently. Okay, Stephen Clayton, the city engineer.
Do you all communicate with each other in some ways, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's interdepartmental review of all these site plans, including the final ones that will come forward. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm still in favor of the amendment that Mayor Pro Tem made, and it's been seconded. So.
I think what I'm hearing, can I suggest a friendly amendment? Can we have an and/or in collaboration between Planning and the Transportation Commission where deemed necessary, in case you get to the mark where Transportation can't move the item forward and they need to consult with Planning?
Sure. So that would be, again, I'm trying to recall the language of the motion, that the developer work with the residents to find work with the residents and/or the East Lansing, work with the residents and the East Lansing Transportation Commission or the planning staff to find a satisfactory traffic calming system. That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor?
Oh, sorry. One more comment. I just don't see, I guess I am new at this. I'm learning, but I don't see what this site plan that we're trying to approve has anything to do with traffic control. And I think that's a separate matter. And I think it's an important matter, but I don't think it belongs in here, so I'm going to vote against.
Thank you.
And yeah, I appreciate your comments, and I hear you on that. And when the concerns were coming up, I wanted to see them addressed, but I agree with you that it's not, the place to me isn't adding it. But I will be voting in favor, though, but thank you for your comments.
And I'll acknowledge as well, it's a little weak. But we'll roll for now.
I do definitely hear that, Mr. Garcia. I think my intent behind this is that there seems to be goodwill on both sides, on the developer side and an interest on the resident side. And there is some concern that the placement of the mailboxes is going to move that traffic pattern and that this is an opportunity to address it. So it's not per se attached to this site plan, but it seems like an opportunity to kind of gently move it forward.
Now, final comment for me, I'll just say it seems you've developed a lot of goodwill on other parts of this project amongst yourselves, so it's not always government necessarily that needs to do everything. I think if you guys can continue that goodwill and partnership, and maybe it doesn't come back here to us. So thank you guys so much. All in favor?
Are we voting on the amendment? The amendment right now, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 3-2.
And I'd like to make another amendment. I'd like to propose that item 5 be changed to read, the project shall be designed, developed, and operated in accordance with all applicable state and local statutes, codes, and regulations.
Second.
Change moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Councilperson Watson. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item 4.5.
We've got to vote on the amended motion. So we voted on the amendments, but we haven't actually voted on the main beef of the thing yet. So
Let's do it.
one more little business operation before we move on.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval for the site plan.
We still have the motion on the floor,
Yeah,
so
it's
this,
already- we've already made the
Okay,
big motion.
we just have to
Yeah.
vote. Okay.
We've been chipping away at the big motion, which was
All right.
already made, so now we have a reformulated big motion that we can vote on.
Good. Ready.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? The big motion carries.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience with that.
Thank you.
Next up, item 4.5, discussion of employee retention strategies.
Again, I wanted to give a little background. It's not a proposal here for action. This was an item that was originally proposed for the discussion-only meeting on April 11th, and because it was a single agenda item for that meeting, we moved it to this particular meeting. So I wanted to just acknowledge that I've provided a memo that outlines some of the staff turnover issues that have resulted, especially at the levels of directors and administrator, so some of the higher level positions. And I started going back to the finance director that left in June of '22, and just kind of move forward to give you some description of those positions that were vacated for one reason or another, and to give you some explanation of how positions were filled and who the interim staff members were, the acting, and some of those things. I wanted to state that part of it was to give an history and provide those things, and then in some cases to also just reflect that there were a number of staff turnovers that were actually short-term, so people had filled the positions for very short periods of time, even though they may have been selected as an acting interim director. So particularly, I think that was the case in both planning and HR, and that, and so while there's still valuable staff and employees, that in some cases people were leaving also for other opportunities that had perhaps not been as invested in the city as others. So as part of the memo, I also shared a document there that talks about this. It's talking about Michigan local government leaders. It's a report that they have increased problems with workforce and recruitment and retention. And it was a document written by the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy. It's just an acknowledgement that this is not only a problem in the city of East Lansing, but that it's also going on elsewhere throughout state and local government. I outlined at least 5 things that we think are contributing to this. One is, of course, regular retirement patterns. 2 that was identified in the article in the study that was attached. It talks about the fatigue and COVID-19, and also what is referred to as the Great Resignation. 3 is that there's some concern about low pay rates that was also discussed as part of that article. 4 was competition from other employers, and I think that has been evidenced by some of those that have left, that have explained that they have gone to other employers and there has certainly been competition from other local employers, local government, state government, and also from the private sector. And then, of course, there's the uncertainty and anxiety created by city manager vacancy. There was a recent article that I think that was done by Eli.org, where there were just a very limited number of exit interviews, and so what we're sharing is what has been shared with us. There were only 3, I think, that were done in total, and so these are, of course, the things that have been shared with us and that people have been willing to share with us. So what we're looking at in terms of strategies, and this is not comprehensive, this is not to state that there aren't other things that will be required, such as discussions around team building, trust building, and all of those things that also have to be done in concert with this. But there is certainly also a need, I believe, to consider first a retention bonus that would be payable. I'm recommending after every 6 months and we would have obviously a start date. I'm looking at proposing January 1, and then that would be for employees that would be paid. The bonus would be paid after June 30th, the first pay period after that, and that bonus would only go to those that were there for the full 6-month period as a part of, again, a retention strategy, and that would be repeated for the next 6-month period that would be paid January of 24. I've proposed different amounts depending on levels within the organization, and also whether they were full-time and in some case, part-time, or in some cases contingent employees. Also recommending that we consider allowing more vacation time to be sold back for a 1-year period. So the bonuses that are proposed are also for a 1-year period. The thinking there, the rationale there is that once a city manager has been selected, there would be some settling, and then at that point it may become unnecessary for some of these things to be done. But the selling back of the vacation time is suggested as also a method of addressing some of the retention issues, because some staff members, where they're short-staffed, they've been unable to use their vacation, and so that would allow them to use to sell back the accumulated vacation time during that period. Third strategy was looking at having some type of stipend. This is something that we're going to institute. We can do that through the current employee wage and benefit line items, and it's looking at and acknowledging that there are some staff members that are working out of their classification. They're doing the work of some of the vacated staff members, and so we're going to create a stipend. The intent here was to try to get some consistency so that we didn't have different amounts for different people in different areas or different directors, and so we are proposing a stipend that would be paid. And then looking at also adding an additional 30 days of severance pay for those at director's level. Again, the thinking there is that if there are those that have concerns that there may be staff changes if a new city manager is selected, that they would have an additional 30-day period of severance, which would move it from 90 days to 120 days, so that in the very unlikely event that some changes were recommended, that they would have that opportunity to seek additional employment. And then the last thing that I'm suggesting is that that we also look at, again, using through ARPA's, get a wage and classification study, and perhaps looking at even our policies and procedures and organizational structure, but at the very least a wage and classification study that would look at not only what we're paying relative to other local communities, but also to all of our competing employers in the area. So if you think about the fact that we recognize we can lose people to other forms of government, but we also have Michigan State University, which is competing employer. We have places like the Accident Fund, the Board of Water and Light, and others that also are looking and recruiting and doing those things. So I just wanted to give you an outline and to allow, if you wanted or needed an opportunity to discuss those things and that if there are ideas, other ideas that have not been presented here. I also wanted to just kind of acknowledge to staff that these things are on the radar, that we understand that there are some concerns and that we are working to try to address those concerns.
I think you kind of buried the lead. I think the back end there on really figuring out the size of the municipality and what the need is, having talked to different directors in some of the meetings that we've been in. I think it's part of it is a matter of, I don't think we're maybe counting correctly. If we're saying we're a community of 50,000, I think we have to really almost look at count different and maybe get some consultative help to show us what size are we really by doors, by amount of service and about that kind of thing, and get us some real numbers, because I know the big challenge is being understaffed. And then also looking at both individually and our structures, talking with different director and manager levels, just how we on the just kind of existential part of that, how we acknowledge success and where we find it, how we talk about it and how we amplify it. I think that's always been kind of an issue, but I think we got to count this. This is similar to when we were coming at the housing study and we knew what the issue is, but I think we need to count it and see what, particularly in areas that require specific amounts in works and DPW and law enforcement, fire. I think it's abundantly clear we've grown. A big part of that growth was during the pandemic, so some of that was masked and a little bit artificial. I think it burns people out, obviously, and people are doing their best. But I don't think we're right sized, and I think we look at. So a lot of those things would be budgetary. I think we got to look at it outside the budget and see how we're right sized, because I think that will dictate our ability to grow and everything else that we're doing here coming up. So I think we got a little bit broader conversation to have around being right sized before we stick another building somewhere. Before we do anything, we got to count and make sure we can service the growth. Because obviously we're having conversations in planning and elsewhere, and I got to make sure the stuff's joined together. So whatever that looks like, I think we need some help with that right sizing across the board as we add.
And Mayor, I think to that end, I would state that I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think one of the challenges we have is when you look at census data, for example, we have, I believe, a very large seasonal population of students that may not identify or name East Lansing as their permanent residence, but certainly impact the service and the delivery model. And I think that also, as you look at increasing density with the larger buildings downtown and all of those things, I think we are undercounted, and that would be a very good use of also that type of study, to look at that and see how we're impacted by those residents that are essentially 10-month residents that are perhaps not counted in our census data.
I like your recommendations, and I don't think you're going to find an employee that doesn't say they want more money, right? More salary, more compensation, more perks. I think it's important to get a sense of what the employees are thinking in a culture survey, if you will. What for their workplace environment? What are their feelings? What are their ideas? We all have great ideas. We're trying to well-intentioned ideas to retain these people. You've done exit surveys. What about a retention survey? What's going to make you want to stay with us? So I think a culture survey is very important as part of the recommendation as well.
Thank you. Make note of that, and I do think that would be absolutely a great idea to be included. I think the challenge, and when the memo was drafted, was looking at, we have an immediate problem that we have to address as quickly as possible, and then we also have some of those kinds of things like the wage classification study, and that would be a part of, I think, that long-term solution as well. Thank you.
And I think perhaps you can break it into that. There's coming back with short-term solution, then some long-term proposals of things that require more funding and that kind of thing. I think it's all kind of on the table. I just think in general, with the amount of projects and the amount of things that are taking place, even the conversations being had in all the spaces that everyone's talking and understanding, particularly I think of the amount of work DPW and the downtown, and particularly just it's just we got to be miscounted here with the amount of activity. So.
Thank you. So, City Manager, your recommendation is all of the short-term solutions. Like this isn't a, oh, two and three sound great or something like that, but you're recommending all of them. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I've put in the memos those that I think might be, I think the ones that are identified as Arbor solutions might be more long-term. So even the bonuses, while we would, I hope, adopt and have a resolution prepared for you relatively quickly, they wouldn't actually take effect until July 1, until also January of 24. So the stipends would happen before then, but obviously it's to incentivize people to stay on for that purpose.
I don't understand the PTO sellback.
So each year, typically the employees are allowed to sell back up to 40 hours of personal time off. So for employees that don't use a lot of leave time and they are approaching their maximums or have already exceeded their maximums, they can typically sell back up to 1 week worth of PTO or personal time off. What I would be proposing here is that for at least a 1-year period that they be allowed to sell back up to 80 hours as opposed to 40 hours of PTO leave for those employees that for reasons of short staff were unable, not just those employees, but it would be available to all, but the rationale would be because some employees are unable to get vacation time because of the staff shortages.
And is that, is that happening? Like it saddens me when people are possibly burnt out and stressed and their vacation time is getting denied, or they feel that they can't be absent from work because it goes away from work-life balance. So is that? I can try to get numbers to see if that's happening repeatedly. So there may be some periods of time where they are unable to use their vacation because it might be a peak period. And then I also would state that there's just a number of employees that, out of their own conscientiousness, often will continue to work through those periods because they know that we're short-staffed. And so we certainly don't want burnout, and that I do understand your concern there. We try to limit those times when vacations are denied, but that it does occur. It could be football weekend or some, when you have welcome weekend or different things that require all hands on deck, and that is typically when we would deny if we have to. Okay. My last two questions is sometimes, so I'm union and into the unions, and sometimes giving $100 to a person comes up to being like a different percentage. And so I'm curious about, like for 3, and even 1, like what is the percentage more that a person's getting at their pay level? And is it income equitable across the board? Like if it's 5% for a director, is it 5% for another an employee?
So if we're looking at the stipend itself, it would depend upon the wage rate that they're being paid and the percentage. So the stipend, what I was trying to do there is that I was being approached by different directors about staff members working out of classification and doing things that exceeded their typical workload. And instead of just having some kind of random number, I tried to establish a rate that I thought would be somewhat fair. So that would be $100 per pay. It equated to about $2.50 over a 40-hour period. I don't know what it would depend on what the staff member is being paid at, whether it would equate to in terms of percentage. But I would also add, when I looked at the bonuses, for example, I think in one case, let me see if I can find that, it would equate to about $1,500 over 6 months, and that would be $3,000 a year. If we were looking at a $60,000 salary, that would be about a 5% bonus. And then at the director's level, it's $2,100. It'd be $4,200 over a 1 year period. At a $80,000 salary, that would be about a 5% bonus. But I will also acknowledge that there's no real science to what that number should be or could be. We wanted to be conscious of how it's perceived publicly, but also conscious of what the demands on our staff as well.
Thanks. And my last question around like the union. So we have union policy where if I'm working a job that's above my classification, I get a certain amount of pay. And so do your unions have something like that? And yeah, do the unions have something like that?
So there are some groups, and so this would be, to clarify, this would be applicable to those unions or those employees where there is no language that specifies. In some unions, there is clear language that if they're working at an acting level, they would adjust to a certain rate, and that's already established in the CBA. And so those would take precedent, and we would be looking at doing this only where they're either non-union or where it's not addressed in the union, but we still would have to get agreements and letters of understanding with those bargaining groups to go in at this rate.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So this covers union and non-union employees?
In some instances, there are some bargaining groups that the intent would be to go and get a letter of agreement with them, but there are some bargaining groups where they don't have any language that addresses acting pay.
Yeah. So is it your recommendation that we implement these payments to all employees?
All employees, the exceptions would be some contingent, but that would likely be addressed through the 6-month requirement, at least for the bonuses. And there are some places, Councilmember Brookover, I think the library, for example, has some long-term contingent staff or some other part-time staff, and so it may look different in certain work groups.
Okay, so I guess before I'm going to be able to go ahead with this, there are maybe 4 or 5 questions. So I think my suggestion would be is that we need to refer this matter to our labor attorneys to see exactly how this plays out in terms of the existing union contracts, because I'm concerned that we may get into difficulty in terms of the existing union contracts. So I think we really need to, I think there's a possibility of an unfair labor practice here, so I think we need to figure that out as a predicate to anything before we do anything more. And then, to me, the obvious question is, what's the cost? I don't see any cost universe here. And then it's my understanding that our directors have written contracts.
That's correct.
Okay, so on your severance pay, I guess I'm assuming that what you're saying is you'd be amending the existing contracts to give them an additional 30 days of severance?
These are the ideals that are being proposed, and they
No,
would.
I understand that. I'm just trying to nail that down. So, all right, so we'd have to amend those contracts, right?
What I would be suggesting is that they be amended, although that may be time limited, or it may be a separate type of
And
agreement.
then the other thing I'd be looking for is, in terms of your thinking here, is once you figure out what a total cost is, subject to advice from the labor attorneys as to whether we can even do it or how we would do it, but then I would be interested in comparing that to, I think we called them bonuses last year, the ARPA money we gave out, in terms of comparing the two subsets in terms of how much was given out the last time and how much you'd be anticipating to give out this time. So I really don't have enough detail here. I mean, I understand your recommendations in general, but I don't have enough detail to go forward on this.
So I
Really
would.
quick, City Manager, there was nothing to move. Were we just sending you back to kind of do that analysis? Wasn't that
Yes, I wanted to state for the record that that is absolutely going to be done, that if there are any agreements, that it would be run through our labor attorneys to make sure that the agreements have satisfied all of those conditions, and that you would also be provided with an estimate of anticipated costs. I think with the exception for the stipends, which can be covered through salary and wages now because of the vacancies that create the availability of that revenue. The other, I would be suggesting and proposing that it would be also handled through ARPA as well, as a way to address the impact of the bonuses. But we will get final numbers. I wanted to see what the appetite was for even considering these types of proposals, and we will definitely come back with the more refined kind of numbers. In that.
I think that it's good if it's broken out almost like a menu in that part of it, and then the larger projects as far as looking at the numbers and right sizing, and the other two suggestions are probably separate questions, but each one of these line items, just break it out as a single line item so we can see it, and then to see if we have to pick and choose per budgetary constraints or whatever. We'll kind of try to balance that way. I think if we can break them out, that should be, there's a lot, that's all good stuff. So, yep.
I would just add that I'm all for the recommendations, but I am in agreement that it's messy with all the contracts and the labor agreements, and that we do, in fact, I agree with Councilperson Brookover that we need to have our labor attorneys take a look at this. So I don't see this as short-term. I think it's a good gesture that we're looking at doing this, and hopefully our employees are seeing that we care about them and that we are looking into this. I don't think it's going to be short-term. But I do want to hear from our employees. Again, maybe that should be a short-term thing to hear what their thoughts are, what their feelings are about retention and them wanting to stay here and working here and not finding employment somewhere else.
And so just to be clear as well, I did solicit and get feedback from all of the directors with regard to some of these proposals, and they were asked to go back and discuss with staff some of those ideas. So I think some of these ideas that have been brought forward have also come from those employees as well.
Very good.
And I do want to make sure council understands we have reached out to Gary Sashtal at Keller Toma, and she is aware of what we're doing here, and obviously will be lockstep with myself and Emily as well.
Thank you. Is there any further questions?
Thank you.
I got two more things. Anyone need a break? We're going to just knock the last one out and do the closed session. 3.6 was the last item.
That's the one that was moved off consent.
Yep. want to just do it and then we'll take a break between? Okay, all right. Next up, item 4.6, formerly 3.6, approval of conditional Class 3 rental license for 854 Terrain, allowing up to 2 unrelated persons or a family to occupy the property. The owner is Antonio Masta Moronico, I think I just murdered that, Traverse City, Michigan, and the local legal agent is D.S. Huber, Lansing, Michigan. Maybe I'll ask first, were there specific questions around this?
I do have some questions, or concerns, I guess. And they're not directed to staff, but at the Planning Commission meeting, I think it was, or the commission went to look at the rental license stuff. This representative from the, I guess, the rental agent appeared, and she indicated that their leases would only be for 12 months, but we don't have a copy of the lease, and I appreciate her representation, but I just think we need some more information here. I think that this is an unfortunate development in terms of this being a lot split to begin with, and I think, I'm dubious about the representations, but assuming that we would allow a rental license here, it seems to me we ought to have some knowledge of exactly what the lease would look like. And specifically, everybody can have a 12-month lease. The question is whether then the lessor or lessee has the right to sublease it for 2 or 3 months, which is what happens all over the town in terms of the students. And so I think we ought to have a copy of that lease. And then I'm also curious as to who actually owns this house, because I did a little research myself, and it looks to me, well, if you look at the initial rental license application, which I think is in our stack, it's page 53 of my set here. But if you go to the second page, at the top of the page, it says, list the names of every resident agent, individual partner, or managing member. And it lists this Huber, which is, I looked them up, and they're advertised as essentially an agent for condos and things like that, to help manage condos. And then I happened to look up the applicant, who you can find him at 3 or 4 different addresses in the last 4 or 5 years in Michigan. But the reality is, in 2019, when he first applied, I think, for the split, on April 24th, he filed an application for a LLC in Michigan named Mastro LLC, and the purpose of the LLC was rental properties construction development. And so I just think it'd be a good idea for us to do a little more due diligence. I'm not, suggesting that staff didn't do what they should have done. They did. But I just think this whole situation's a little strange, and I think we ought to do a little more research before we go down the road on this rental license. So that would be my suggestion. I guess in the end, what I'd suggest is that we table that pending receipt of that additional information.
The request to table?
Yeah, I'll move to table it.
Okay. Second. Discussion?
I'll support.
I got it. I already did it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Bacon.
Okay.
And let me just say there's one other, and I think I know a little bit about this, but it's been a while. So the application is for a rental license for 2 or a family, and I understand there's a legal you know, the Ann Arbor decision in Michigan creates that definitional construct, but given the size of this particular site, I don't understand how you could ever have a family in there. So I think we at least maybe might want to have the city attorney look at that. I think, unfortunately, I know what the answer is under the case law, but it seems to me that's a third thing we should at least look at, because I don't think that's a very good site to put a family of 4 people in. So I think there's only 1 bedroom, correct? It's either like an open site plan or something?
Correct.
Yeah. So.
Further discussion?
Is there a standard time for when they would be able to start renting?
They cannot rent the property until a rental license is issued.
And is that like 30 days or 10 days?
When this body issues the license, then they could start renting the next day.
I see. Okay. All right. All right. And so the motion is to table it until we get the additional information that you mentioned. Okay. Thank you.
Questions, further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion to table? Aye. Against? Motion carries to table. Next up, closed session, item 5.1. City attorney requests closed session pursuant to MCL 15.2681H to discuss an attorney-client privilege memorandum that is exempt from discussion pursuant to MCL 15.2431G. We'll be entering in with a roll call vote. We won't be returning back for any more public interaction. We will come back and adjourn the meeting. So for the public portion of the meeting, essentially is adjourned if people want to leave at that point.
So I move we go into a closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 paren 1 n paren small h n paren to discuss an attorney-client privilege memorandum that is exempt from disclosure pursuant to MCL 15.243 paren 1 n paren small g n paren.
Second?
Second.
Already seconded. I know it's hard to hear in here today. Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Bacon. All in further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Brookover?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
Yes.
Mayor Bacon?
Yes. Otherwise, thank you guys for coming out tonight.
closed session back into open session.
Second. Roll call?
Councilmember Brookover?
Yes.
Councilmember Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
Yes.
Mayor Bacon?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks for staying, you guys.
Sorry about